The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's webinar, Positive Approaches to Discipline. This is our second in our series of 2 webinars on this topic. This webinar is presented by Jewish Family and Children's Service, Parents in a Pinch, and Magic Beans. Jewish Family and Children's Service is Greater Boston's leading and trusted provider of comprehensive human services. Parents in a Pinch is an award-winning backup care and nanny placement company that provides a safety net for working parents whenever gaps in their child care or elder care arrangements occur. Magic Beans is a toy store with more than 5 locations in the Boston area that caters to the needs of infants, toddlers, children, and their parents. I am delighted today to have Karen Lowry with us. She is going to be our presenter.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Karen Lowry, and I am a clinical social worker with a psychotherapy practice in Lexington, Massachusetts. I help my clients focus on the transition to parenthood and a variety of issues that families face.
And my name is Jennifer Meyer-Hart. I will be co-presenting with Karen. I work at Jewish Family and Children's Services. I specifically focus on working with high-risk families and their young children. The topics today will be presented through slides. This webinar can only be heard through your phone. Your voices will be muted. Questions can be submitted in the dialog box to the right of the screen and will be either answered individually by myself or addressed for the group by Karen. At this point, we are going to begin our webinar, Positive Approaches to Discipline, Creating a Successful Home Environment and Using Effective Limits, Goals, and Consequences.
Thank you, Jennifer. Last time, we explored child development, what is positive discipline, and how to use it to help your child develop important internal qualities. Today, we'll build on that by discussing how to create a home environment to encourage children's successful behavior and how to use limits, goals, and consequences effectively. There were a few key ideas from part 1 that I'd like to just quickly review. One of the issues we talked about is that it's helpful to be curious about your child's development and behavior. It's helpful to look for what your child might be trying to tell you. What's the meaning underlying his or her behavior or misbehavior? Sometimes children act out of frustration or stress. Perhaps there's been a big change, like a new baby or a move, or going to a new school. Maybe your child is looking for attention. If you can help figure out what your child is trying to tell you, you might be able to address the underlying reasons and help your child that way. The other thing that is good to be curious about is to try to figure out when is the misbehavior happening, what preceded it. It could be at a certain time of day, or if your child is in a group as opposed to alone. There may be many factors. And it's helpful to figure out which ones affect your child. The other issue that we talked about was comparing punishment with discipline. Those are terms that often people use interchangeably, but I think of them as quite different. Punishment tends to be when a parent is upset and really wants to take out that feeling on the child. Discipline, on the other hand, is looking at it as a teaching opportunity. We like to teach our children how to understand the effects of their behavior on other people and on the world around them, and how to hopefully use alternative ways and to encourage that to become an internal process. That brings us to today's subject. How do we put the idea of positive discipline into action? There are 3 steps that we'll talk about: setting the stage, giving clear limits, and following through. Step 1 is setting the stage. The aim is to prevent some of the meltdowns and bad behaviors so that we don't have to respond to them. If we can do that to get a few of the conflicts and struggles out of the way, then we can focus on the ones that we really need to address. There are several ways that we can set up the environment positively to encourage successful behavior. The first thing I like to think about is what I call fuel in the tank. These are issues that are often overlooked for our children. Have they had enough to eat? Are they rested? Do they have the right level of stimulation? I know even for myself that these things will affect my mood and how well I'm able to handle challenges. For children, that's extremely important as well. So it's important to make sure that they've been fed and have snacks at appropriate times, perhaps have a nap, or to notice if your child has missed a nap, maybe go easy on him or her, not put too many demands that day. And the right level of stimulation, what does that mean? It helps if your child can be in the type of state where he's not too frazzled and overwhelmed, and also not understimulated or bored. Some of the things that can overstimulate children can be noise, bright lights, groups, crowds, and also rushing around. How many times have you had a big demand at work and thought, I just have to get to work right now for a big project, and that is precisely the time that your child decides to have a tantrum? Well, I don't think that that's a coincidence. I believe that when we're rushing around, we're less able to go with the flow and react appropriately, and our child senses that as well, and that's when the struggles happen. So if we can be in a better mood, there will be fewer fights. The second area is to organize physical surroundings. That can help in putting the environment in a successful frame so that we prevent some of the misbehavior from happening. This is where I take a cue from preschools, because I think they're the experts, because they have to be. What I like to do is look around a house from the child's point of view. What can be made more accessible? I'm sorry.
Karen, I'm sorry. It appears that no one is able to see the slides, so we're just going to pause for 1 minute so that we can get, because these are fantastic visuals, and I would hate for anyone to miss them. Okay, fantastic. Apparently the slides are up. If for any reason you can't see them, please let us know in your dialog box. But as far as we know, everyone can now see Karen's wonderful slides.
Would it help to go back to one slide to set it up just a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, Karen.
Thanks. Why don't we go back, if we're able to. Okay. Just to review, our overview for today are the 3 steps for how we're going to put positive discipline into action: the setting the stage, giving clear limits, and following through. And we were talking about the first stage, which is setting up the environment. To organize the physical surroundings, I like to go around a house from the child's point of view and figure out what can be made more accessible to your child. And then he or she can have more independence, and you don't have to get into as many struggles. Maybe hooks can be put at a child's height. You can use a step stool. Maybe a comforter would be the easiest way for a child to be able to make her bed. And toys and art supplies can be pared down and organized in bins. It helps to get rid of the excess. One family I worked with found that clutter was becoming a real source of stress for everyone, and they instituted a rule that if a toy was added, perhaps at a birthday, another toy should be given away, and that helps them keep things much more manageable. By the same token, you can remove distracting items like toys that you don't want your child to be playing with at the moment. Put them out of sight and they'll be out of mind. Okay? And the third area, in a similar vein, is to simplify routines. I know in our house we have a phrase, we do the have-tos before the want-tos, and that helps keep in mind the order that we do things. It's also a lot easier to motivate your child to do the more difficult tasks and have the more fun thing be the reward. You can break break tasks into just a few steps. And this is where some knowledge of what your child's developmental level is at comes in handy. For younger children, you'll want things to be very clear with just a couple of steps. And as they get older, you can increase what you demand. And anything you can do ahead of time can also help, like laying out clothes the night before, putting routines and lists or even pictures for children who can't read yet so that they know what's expected. Okay. Step 2, giving clear limits. This may sound obvious, but it's actually pretty hard to do this. What does it mean? The first thing is to describe the behavior you wish to see in a positive way and the reason for it. It should be observable behavior. So instead of saying, be nice, maybe try, we use gentle hands, hitting hurts. This also helps your child visualize the behavior that you want to see. Have you ever noticed that sometimes if you say, don't hit, what seems to stick in your child's mind is hit? So if you can put that picture of what you want to see happen, it might increase its likelihood. And the reason helps as well. So sometimes you can say something like, I can hear your regular voice better than whining. And your child might think, well, if I use a regular voice, maybe I'll get what I want. Giving a reason can help so that your child knows that it's not arbitrary. And then he might be more likely to get on board. Another area for setting clear limits is to make it the child's decision, to shift the responsibility for the behavior to your child. So instead of a parent or a caregiver just giving a firm demand, if you give your child the responsibility, put him in the driver's seat, he's more likely to see it as a motivating factor. For example, if you say food is for eating, if you throw it, dinner is over, then she can think to herself, do I want to eat or do I want dinner to be over? Another a way to think of it is to help your child learn how to regulate his or her emotions. You say, when you feel in control again, you can come back. A lot of people ask me about timeouts and if they work, how they should work, how you should do them. And those are individual issues that vary from family to family. Some people have general rules about perhaps 1 minute of a timeout for every year of age. But another approach is also to encourage your child to notice what it's for. And if your child is in a timeout and you say, when you feel in control again or calm, you can come back, that'll encourage your child to really learn how to do that.
Karen, it also seems to me a lot of parents I work with, I have to remind them that when they give the child the decision, whatever the other side of it, whether they say, if you throw your food, dinner will be over, that they have to be willing and able to follow through. If they offer extra time for reading, they have to know that they're going to have the patience and time for that.
That's an excellent point, Jennifer. Sometimes we'll talk about consistency more a little bit later, but one thing that can help you decide whether you have the energy to do that, to be consistent, is it may take extra effort up front to follow through on something. Perhaps your child is having tantrums in a supermarket, and you say, if you can't behave, we're going to have to just leave. Well, it may be that one time leave and come back and do the shopping later, which is a lot of effort. However, it can have a big payoff. If your child realizes, mom or dad means business, this is really something I should think about, then perhaps the next time you're in the supermarket, your child will think twice and really try harder. Whereas if you hadn't done that, you may be struggling with that issue for years. One of my favorite tricks for success is to offer acceptable choices. Maybe you'd like your child to turn off the TV. You could phrase it as, would you like to turn off the TV now or in 10 minutes? As long as both of those choices are okay for you, why not give your child a little freedom to choose? Or blue mittens or green ones today? That's sort of a gentler way to set an expectation of wearing mittens. You can choose the order for brushing your teeth, pajamas, and reading. If you let your child have some independence in choosing those things, it still gets across that she needs to do all three before going to bed.
Karen, our first poll question is coming up. I'll ask everyone in their box to respond, and I'll give you a moment to do so. The first poll question is, are transitions a time of conflict in your home? And I'll give everyone a moment to answer. Well, almost all of you have answered, and interestingly, 100% of you say that transitions are a time of conflict in your home. Karen, do you have some ideas about how to work with this issue?
First of all, I have to say I'm not too surprised. Transitions are a challenging time for most families. They're difficult for not just children, but also for adults. How many times I can think that I've been trying to send an email or something, and I keep telling my children, oh, I'll just be one more minute, and I have trouble transitioning out of a topic, out of one activity to another. This is obviously very difficult for children as well. So there are a couple of ways to increase the odds of successful behavior. And I'm going to talk about this second one, preparing for transitions first. Transitions can be helpful to think of the actual time needed for a transition. There's the time you might be doing the first activity, or your child. Let's say your child is playing with trains, and he's very absorbed in it. There's that time, and then you need to also think of the time for transitioning, and then the time that the next activity needs to start. And if you can give your child a heads up, that helps. So you can give warnings for time, like in 15 minutes it'll be time to put away the trains, and then give another warning in 10 minutes or 2 minutes. You can also use a timer, which takes the onus off of you as the parent or caregiver. And you can say, when the timer rings, we need to leave the house. These things help structure the expectations so that your child can internalize these structures. And then he starts to learn, oh, this is how I do a transition. And then it's also important to notice triggers and leave before the meltdown. You may have heard that saying, or like, this is our window to leave. What that means is often there's a moment when you can notice certain things in your child, like a red face or whiny behavior or increasing conflict, and you might notice, I think a meltdown is coming along. Instead of waiting for that and then having to get angry and follow through with a consequence or something, you could decide, this is a really good time to end while things are still successful. The other way to increase the odds of successful behavior is to what I call catching good behavior. That can be things like, you use such a nice voice, thank you. Or I noticed you were sharing with Sophie, good job. These are free ways to just get your expectations across and make your child feel good and reinforce what it is you're looking for. It also can help, obviously, with your child's confidence. We're just waiting for the next slide. There we go. Step 3. Sometimes misbehavior can't be prevented, despite doing all the things right, setting up the environment the right way, setting clear expectations, doing everything that you're supposed to. Guess what? There's still going to be some misbehavior. So what do you do in those cases? It's because it's inevitable. Children are going to test limits, and they're not perfect. When a child hits or has a tantrum, takes something that isn't his or hers, uses bad language or breaks something, how should we follow through? Well, the first thing I'd like to think about is not so much what to do, but how to do it. To respond appropriately to misbehavior, we should do it calmly, consistently, and with empathy. It helps to be aware some parents have their own levels of reactivity. Perhaps some parents grew up in a house and there was a lot of yelling or reacting or punishing, and that might be a pattern that just seems to come naturally under times of stress. But if that's true in your case, then it's helpful to really become aware of that so that you can see your own cues. If you feel your agitation rising and you just want to pull your hair out when misbehavior happens, or you're feeling personally attacked, then that's time to calm down. There are a few ways to calm down that actually can work for adults or children. First of all, the first thing to do is to just pause. If you feel yourself getting very upset, you can count to 20, take some deep breaths, tense and relax your muscles. Those are things that will calm down your body, and when that happens, it'll help calm down your emotions as well. You can also take a calm out, which is, why don't we go back to the last slide? That's okay. You can take what's called a calm out, sort of like a timeout, but I think of it as a place you can set up that feels soothing. It could be a quiet room or soft music playing, some sort of maybe a cool cloth on your forehead, somewhere where you just feel like you can regain your composure and calm down. Sometimes children or adults can find a lot of help through writing or drawing their feelings, and it just gets that intense emotion out of their bodies and onto the paper and can help organize your thoughts for when you are ready to do some problem solving. And for some people, just getting outdoors or taking a walk or doing a little exercise can also help.
Karen, I work with a family whose mother taught her daughter to yoga breathe, just deep breathe, and it's not only become an actual way for them to calm down, but it's become actually a little signal. So if either of them starts to get excited, all they have to say is yoga breathing, and they know that as a little signal that they should remind themselves to do one of their calming methods.
Oh, I think that's a fabulous idea. It's a positive kind of teamwork approach to it. Okay, last time we talked about punishment versus discipline, and I just want to review that punishment is what I think of when we haven't calmed down. And we may have all been there at one time or another where we just want to vent our anger and sort of get back at a child for whatever the misdeed was. Often it involves things like yelling and overreacting. And at the end, you know that punishment has happened because everyone feels horrible. Discipline, on the other hand, is if you are able to remain calm and you think about it as, how can I help my child? This is a way to help him or her understand what went wrong and how to improve things for next time. It takes empathy and faith that your child can do better. And that brings a sense of structure and safety and caring. Okay. Now that we're calm, what do? We want to use logical consequences, things that are natural consequences. So, for instance, if someone draws on the wall, maybe clean the wall. Or if maybe siblings are fighting over a toy, the best thing to do then that connects it to the action would be to remove the toy. And when they're getting along better, they can get the toy back. I use a slightly more extenuated connection for behavior that doesn't fit into a category. Sometimes I'll say it drains the energy out of the house, and that energy can only be refilled through work. That way, it's a catch-all. And if there's some misbehavior you don't know how to address, you can just think of it that way. As Jennifer mentioned before, it's really important to be consistent. Idle threats will just reinforce the misbehavior. Like that child in the supermarket will think, I can just get away with it if all she hears are threats. But if action really is consistent and consistent across parents and caregivers, then it's much more likely to be effective. But as with most things, you don't have to be perfect. It's just a most of the time thing. Okay. So for some basic behaviors, you can just use matter-of-fact, simple responses with consequences or rewards. But if the pattern is more complicated or emotional, or it affects others, that's when I really think of what the heart of positive discipline is. It's time to use it as a teaching opportunity. Once your child is calmed down, it helps to discuss with him or her, what was it like? What were his feelings? And to empathize with those feelings. You can teach your child that all feelings are okay, but not all actions are okay. Say your child, I don't know, hit her new baby sister. You can say, what was it like? What was going on? And maybe your child will say, well, she took my toy. Then you could say, oh, gee, I can see why that made you angry. See if you can then figure out if it's possible for your child to fix the issue and feel good about that. Maybe he could apologize or be kind, offer the baby, I don't know, some sort of blankie or something. And then brainstorm better choices to make next time. If you can involve your child in that, then she can go from just being told what to do to really joining forces as a problem solver. You can say, we all get angry sometimes. What can you do next time someone makes you really angry? Help her prepare for those strong feelings and regulate them. Maybe she can come up with some alternatives like, okay, I guess I'd say, I don't like that. Or she could tell a grown-up or walk away. Hopefully your child will come up with some of these ideas. The reason why I like this approach, a positive discipline approach, is that it's a teaching approach, and it helps your child internalize the positive ways of interacting. Okay, I think we have some time.
We're going to, Karen, I think because we had a little problem with the slides, for those who are able to stay online, we're going to take the next 5 minutes to answer some of your questions. We've already got in some great questions. I'm going to start with the first one, and Karen and I will both answer them. The first question we received is, should parents discipline for misbehavior that occurs in school? And I'll say a little something, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, Karen. I mean, I think it's a great question because there's always this thought about what is the distinction between what's going on in home and what is going on in the general world. And I think it's important for children to understand that you do expect good behavior wherever they are. So if something happens in school, I think it's important to take some of the techniques that Karen talked about and talk to your children about what happened and really help them understand where the behavior came from, what was going on for them, and talk to them about what those consequences are, both at school and at home. There can be consequences at school, such as the teacher may keep them in for recess, which doesn't mean that you can't have consequences at home, as long as you're clear with what those expectations are and consequences, and you do it in a way that's appropriate. I think it is a good idea for the discipline, the learning, the teaching to go on both in the school and the home, so the children understand that there is a connection between the two, and good behavior and internal control is expected wherever they are, and it is a learning process. What do you think, Karen?
Oh, I agree with everything you said. I would just add to it that if you can find out if it was addressed at school, then you might not need to repeat addressing it at home, but just to have it be a team approach so that the school and the family are acting in concert and everyone knows what's going on. That way it can be addressed in a consistent manner.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here's another question. Should parents intervene in fights between siblings?
Oh boy, that's a hot topic. I think that when siblings are fighting, you might find a number of different approaches helpful. Sometimes it helps to intervene, and sometimes it just increases the amount of attention that you're giving to both children. In those cases, if it seems to be a real pattern where they're just wanting you to solve their problems all the time, and they're old enough to take a part in it themselves, I would perhaps sit them down and depending on the type of disagreement, sometimes I'll sit down on the floor and have one child on one side and one on the other, and we have just a system for going through a conflict where one person talks at a time and the other person will definitely get a chance, and then either at that point, once they've calmed down, they can come up with solutions, or if that's not happening, I might separate them, or we can, occasionally it might work for the adult to just say, I'm tired of these constant disagreements, so we're going to settle it this way. And other times it may just help to separate and have them each in their own area for a while and see if they can play together well afterward. Just changing the setting can sometimes help.
Karen, here's another question, and this is one I often have people ask me when I work with families on behavioral issues. Any suggestions do you have when you're trying to discipline your child and they laugh at you or are ignoring you?
That can be horrifying. I personally find it really gets to me when either if I were to say something to my own children and they say fine, or throw it back at me or laugh at me, I take it very personally, and I find it hard to see it as other behavior that they do. That might be a cue to pause, take a bit of time to get yourself to a centered place where you feel you can respond appropriately. But by all means, you can include that, your child's manner in what you're responding to. So, perhaps there was an original misbehavior, but it's okay to also say, we have expectations for how to speak respectfully, and I don't like it when you use that tone or when you laugh at me. That hurts my feelings. You can really explain what effect those things have and address those head on.
Also, I think, Karen, in a lot of families I see, the kids respond that way because they're extremely uncomfortable or they're worried about what the consequences are going to be. So I think also it's important for the parent, knowing their child best, to think about perhaps why is the child behaving that way, because oftentimes it really comes from a place of their own discomfort or embarrassment.
That's a good point. Clearly, I just gave up. My own trigger tends to be toward anger. But if you notice in your child that it might be out of discomfort, then it might be helpful to say that. I think you're feeling uncomfortable, and that's why you're laughing. We need to stay focused on this was not okay, and this is how you should behave next time.
I think that's all the time we have for questions. Karen, this was fantastic, really interesting. Please save the date for our next webinar, Dads, Striking a Work-Life Balance. For all working parents, there is never enough time in the day to attend family, work, and self. In this webinar, we will examine how this stress manifests itself for dads and explore strategies to make it all work. That webinar will occur May 23rd at 12:30 p.m. We have individualized parenting support, so if you've heard anything today or anything you're thinking about that you think you would like to work with one of our parenting specialists one-on-one, please contact Terry Chevitt at tchevitt@jfcsboston.org, or you can call at 781-693-5669. We can meet with you either in your home or in our office. You can also learn more about our parent consultation program at www.jfcsboston.org/parent consultations. It's been a pleasure having you join us today. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we will look forward to seeing you again virtually on May 23rd.